And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Monday morning, getting you ready for an 8-game NBA slate. Dave, I know how you are. I'm going to ask you anyway. How the hell are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'll tell you what. You want to talk about a roller coaster ride of emotions? Oh my gosh! I mean, last week you had the Eagles and just squeaking into the playoffs. You know, the field goal as time expired in Week 16 against Houston. The Rams coming back almost winning in Week 15. Like it's been a wild few weeks, and it's been crazy, but it's been enjoyable. And I think I told you before we started recording. Hey, yeah. Is there a good chance we don't beat the Saints next week? Yeah, absolutely. But hey, it's another week after the regular season ended, and I still get to enjoy football, rooting for my team. It was a crazy win. Nick Foles once again came up clutch, and that Golden Tate 4th and goal catch and just throw. It was all beautiful. And by the way, you had sent me something actually, a frame-by-frame video of Cody Parkey's missed field goal attempt. The double doink, they're calling it.
Yeah.
Hit the upright and then hit the crossbar. It was tipped by Trayvon Hester, and it clearly shows it, huh?
Yep. Frame by frame shows that two fingers got a piece of it, and how much that influenced the flight of the ball. I'm not a physicist here. I'm not a somebody who studies the flight and trajectory of anything, but it definitely seemed to alter it enough that the Eagles had influence on the kick. And you feel bad for Cody Parkey, obviously, and I know Bears fans. He was an
Eagles player too. By the way.
He got hurt, right? He got hurt and then was released, and so he had 5. I think
was
5
he the
on the
one
season.
that got hurt, and then they brought Elliott in. Now that I think about it,
yep, that's him. And apparently, what's his name? The one who dressed up at the parade last year.
Jason Kelce.
Jason Kelce was a real dick to him after the game, apparently. There's a quote. Yeah, he went up to him and said, he hasn't been the same since the injury. I actually thanked him after the game for missing it.
It was Brandon Graham was saying, thanks, Cody, all this. I mean, it's rough. It's rough. But as I said, the fact that it got tipped makes me hope that Chicago doesn't try to murder him.
Right. Well, there are people apparently Eagles fans on Venmo are sending him cash. So there's
already a GoFundMe for an unemployment fund, $5 million target goal.
Oh God!
Did you see the Bird Box meme of him blindfolded? I mean, it got out of control quick.
It happens quickly these days. That is for damn sure. Hopefully, he answered every question from the media. He took his medicine. He did what he had to do. So hopefully he can get out of Dodge quickly. Go on vacation and get out of Chicago and get some peace of mind there. But we will talk about this. It was a weird weekend of NFL overall. Glad to see the Colts moving on. That Dallas game was
they looked phenomenal, by the way.
A strange, yeah. Their defense is all of a sudden really good. Remember the beginning of the season, everyone thought they were going to be one of the worst in the league, and Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck. And Marlon Mack, their offensive line is legitimately one of the tops in the NFL. So they're going to be a tough out for Kansas City. That's going to be a lot of points. The Chargers-Ravens game was something to behold, but the Chargers move on to take on the Pats.
Hey, that got good at the end, man.
It did. I was happy for Lamar Jackson, too.
It out.
Yeah,
the fact that he didn't finish is the worst quarterbacking performance in the history of the playoffs. Yeah. He actually turned it on towards the end. Wasn't enough. And the Chargers deserved to win that game. No question. No question. But yeah, it was a really good game. The weekend, you're right, though, was strange. I thought people complained about a lot of games. I thought the only game that was really kind of brutal was the Colts-Texans, because it wasn't really competitive from the jump. And Frank Wright was brilliant. And Deshaun Watson had the worst game of his career. A lot got blamed on Hopkins, but it's tough when everything's getting thrown at your feet. The Cowboys-Seattle game, it was tough. It was tough to watch at times, but it was a competitive game all the way throughout, up until the last couple of minutes. And then today's game, it's one of those games where early on it's tough, but if you stick through it, the last 6-7 minutes made all of it worth it. And the last game, yeah, low scoring, but that game, man, and I'm an Eagles fan, yeah, but I mean, if you want to talk about just clutch plays on each side of the game and a nail biter through and through, you got it.
All right, we do have 8 NBA games to get to here, and don't want to linger too much longer on NFL. As always, Osmo.com does have NFL content on through the playoffs, so you can head on over and use.
One more thing. So remember how every game was like 41 or 42 point total? I know
Yep.
the Colts Texans was 48. We got a 57, a 51,
Yep.
a 49, a 48. So next week is undoubtedly going to be way different and a whole lot more fun. So enjoy the last 4-game slate of the season.
Yep, it's going to be a fun one. So Osmo.com, use the promo code EarlyBird. You should see it on your screen here. Use that if you're on YouTube, if you're on iTunes, EarlyBird, one word. And you can use that for 1 week free content. So if you want to log in Monday morning, that'll get you on through Sunday with free content.
Shit. We're on screen again?
We're on screen, yeah.
Oh, man.
Come on. We got some tweets last time. I just put this background up for fun. But nonetheless, thanks. I appreciate that. Nonetheless, 8 games. We start at point guard. We run through center. You do get Dave on the deep dive Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Adam, Ship My Money Share is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And they are available behind the paywall. You get Josh's projections along with some influence from some others at Osmo.com. And you get Alex's grades. That can help you build lineups in the lineup builder. So with that said, let's dive in here, Dave, at point guard. Well, injuries, as always, I guess, is first and foremost. LeBron James continues to sit, not traveling with the Lakers. Chris Paul is obviously out for the Houston Rockets. I believe Kyle Kuzma is out, or at least was out Sunday. I don't know if he's been ruled out Monday as of yet. Any other names that you have on your radar from an injury perspective that could influence this slate?
Yeah, a couple of them, a couple big ones here. Now, first of all, we got what? Would you say 8 games, right?
Yep.
So kind of in the wheelhouse. You like the 8 gamers. Kyrie Irving's not even on the injury report anymore from what I've seen, which is good. I was trying to read through this, so I may have missed a couple. If you said them, I'll just be quick. LeBron James remains out. They said at least 2 more games, so we'll see what's going on there. And then you get guys like Shumpert, Mitchell Robinson, Ntilikina, not big names, but guys that, if you're looking enough, will affect the rotation. So just pay attention to that. Mirotic remains out. Eric Gordon remains out. So basically James Harden will just continue to dominate. And we got the one rough game out of the way. So he'll just go on continuing to do James Harden type things after that one. Aside from that, though, there's really not a lot, right? Each one more is questionable here. And then Kyle Kuzma on the second of a back-to-back is also questionable. Interestingly, not sure if you saw the Lakers starting lineup yesterday. I'm assuming you did, but it was not what we'd seen in the previous game. So it could have been a matchup-dependent thing, and you'll see coaches do that pretty often these days. But they got smoked. They lost by 22 points on the road to Minnesota. And obviously also a Minnesota team that was without Derrick Rose and Covington again. But you saw a starting lineup of Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Zubats, and then JaVale McGee. So Zubats started at power forward. Caldwell Pope went back to the bench. We'll see what happens here in this matchup. Not against Minnesota, but against Dallas. I don't think you'll see that same starting lineup, but if we do, we're going to have to make adjustments. And fortunately, it's not a 10 p.m. game. It's an 8 p.m. game, which Eastern time, which should make our lives a little bit easier.
All right, let's dive in here, and we have some good matchups on this.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, get that right, Dave. Come on. I
try to be accurate here.
7:30, let's see, 3 8s and 8:30, and then 2 10s. So a spread out slate. You may see, I don't know if Fantasy Draft, I haven't checked yet. Fantasy Draft of late has been giving you that extra half hour. So they've been trying to get a different segment of the DFS population by running later slates, by leaving the early game off, whether it's 7 or 8 or whatever it is, and saying you get an extra half hour to sort of allow for lock to happen and hope people migrate over. So I'll double check if that is the case. Just an FYI, that another place to play and somewhere that you may be able to get a little bit more researching as you build your lineups before lock at 7:30 over there. If that is the case, I'll double check. Harden is at the top here at 12K. You made mention that Kyrie Irving doesn't even have a designation here. He's off the injury report. He's fully expected to play Monday. He will be active here in this matchup with the Brooklyn Nets. Lillard, Holiday, Ingram, Mike Conley against New Orleans at 7,500. Then you get into Lonzo Ball, De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell's here at 7,400. Some good matchups. Obviously, we can let's leave Harden for shooting guard. So we start at Irving and Damian Lillard. No point guard over 10K if we obviously remove Harden. What do you got as some of your favorites just below 10K?
And it's funny, Lonzo Ball, he had that one big game with LeBron out, right? He's now played 6 games with no LeBron. 6 games with no LeBron. Tomorrow or today, depending on when you're viewing or listening, will be his 7th. His fantasy totals after that 58-point game where he came a rebound shy of a triple-double. So I think in a spot like this, you still consider him. But look, Lonzo Ball, when we were getting him at 5,700 with no LeBron, it's like, all right, lock him in. And then we got lucky that he had a monster game. But we're seeing this again. I'm not saying Lonzo's not a good player, but I mean, up above 7K is tough, especially when you're struggling like this with Kuzma and LeBron off the court. I mean, hell, you've gotten matchups against Sacramento and the Clippers. Neither of them are difficult spots. Sure, the Thunder's a tough spot, but then the Knicks, Minnesota, these are not very difficult matchups. Just wanted to get that out of the way because I keep coming back to it. You know, I'm interested. I'm definitely intrigued by Lonzo, but hell, man, you gotta give us something here. And we don't have a line here yet, waiting on Kuzma, of course, but it's funny. Like I think one of the biggest things we're seeing is Lonzo kind of needs scores out there because he needs to facilitate, right? You look at his assist totals over the last 2 games with Kuzma out, 2 and 4. And is that a coincidence? It certainly could be. We'll check his potential assists. If they're still up and he's seeing this, you'd still expect some regression, but you got worse shooters on the court. KCP wasn't going to keep lighting it up. To me, that says something. And, Lonzo's his shot volume will increase, but he's not a 25 shot per game guy in any circumstance, Dan. I wonder if it actually hurts him. Having Kuzma on the court might be better than not having Kyle Kuzma on the court because he's not a facilitator. He's not taking anything away from you in that regard. Lillard at home against the Knicks. This is a good spot. And the Knicks have actually been, keeping games remotely competitive at times. Is it every time? No, of course not. But it's been enough to say, hey, maybe this game won't be a complete disaster. You're looking at they just beat the Lakers on the road at the Staples Center by 7. They lost to Denver by 7 in a game that they had a lead for a significant amount of time. So they're at least not getting smoked every time they go out there. And the only reason I mention this is because I really like this spot for Dame. And then I don't know what Ntilikina's situation is or, hell, how many minutes he'd play, but it looked like he's coming into like an 18, 20-minute per game role. And just not having him out there as a defensive guard also helps for the 18, 20 minutes he's there. You get Dame Lillard, who is a very good scorer, a great second-half player. I worry, though, because if it blows out, Lillard's not the type of guy that needs to erupt in the second half, and he is a second-half guy. That's when you really like him. If anything, at a similar price point, and like you said, we'll get to Harden, I like Irving a little bit more here. And the reason for that, believe it or not, is I think this game stays closer. The Boston Celtics are 10.5-point favorites, but let's not kid ourselves. The Nets are not playing bad basketball right now. They've come back down to earth a little bit. I understand that, but it's still a team that is not just getting steamrolled, and they actually have some good players. They have a little bit of depth here. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson being out doesn't help, but hey, that it's not a great Eastern Conference. They're 7th in the East, Dan. They're 1 game below 500, right? They're 10-10 on the road. They're 500 on the road. They're 7-3 over the last 10 games. They've won 3 straight. I think this 10.5-point line is actually a Nets line. I like it for the Nets. I don't just like Irving because I expect it to stay close and I like the matchup, but I like Nets plus 10.5 too.
It's one of those games where you could see it staying a lot closer than Vegas is predicting it. And I think that's how you make money here, right? You find the games where someone like Kyrie will get more run and be forced to do a little bit more because the Nets hold it closer. They have scores, Mitchell and Dinwiddie, and I do like Jared Allen a lot, and you've seen a lot out of the front court. That's what I said. I said D'Angelo. I said Russell, didn't I? Okay. I might have. We can roll it back.
That's okay. We will.
We'll check that one.
Trying to help you out.
Yeah, fair. D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, and they have Jared Allen. Then they've gotten some really good front court play from some of the veterans like Damari Carroll and even was it Kurucs? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Kurucs, yeah.
Kurucs has had his moments as well, and then you do get the mix of a Joe Harris or others who can come off the bench and do enough to keep them in games. But any mid-tier or cheap options here at point guard that stand out, guys that may be in a spot to exceed their price tag? I do see Spencer Dinwiddie's dropped all the way back down to 5,800 on DraftKings after a couple of lackluster outings over the past couple of games. You have Moutier at 6,100, Ricky Rubio's at 5,600, though, in a tough matchup with Milwaukee. Anybody you like in the mid or lower tiers?
One guy that I really liked on Friday, put him in a deep dive and then just had trouble getting to him when finalizing lineups was Mike Conley. He went off for 46 fantasy points, 31 real points, another really solid game. I mean, he's putting up great numbers this year when healthy. And, we were concerned. I had mentioned, did he get the range of motion back, flexibility in his shoulder? He said he did prior to game time, so we'll take his word for it, but still a little sketchy. Because remember, 2 days before that, he shot 0 for 8. First time ever going scoreless when shooting 8 or more field goals in a game. He had a great game. And then followed it up with 28 fantasy points in 25 minutes and a blowout loss to San Antonio, the second of a back-to-back, too. I like him here against New Orleans quite a bit. I think I've stressed this a lot this season, but the Pelicans' defense, which was at one time, last year, very solid against opposing point guards, they've really been really struggling. I mean, you just look at the position. They're allowing the fourth most points to opposing point guards this season. They're allowing them to shoot 46% from the field, the fifth highest field goal percentage. Not only that, but when you look at the three-point percentage allowed to opposing point guards, only the Atlanta Hawks are allowing a higher mark than New Orleans this year, and only 4 teams are allowing a higher overall efficiency. Mike Conley is a solid play here at a mid-7K price point. I think it's a really nice spot. I prefer him over guys like Drew Holiday, who has just been remarkably consistent day in and day out, but I don't like this matchup for him. It's a little bit tough. I also don't like the fact that he's been playing off the ball a whole lot more. And we saw Elfrid Payton return, and Drew Holiday playing a lot of wing and not as much ball handling, which concerns me. And yes, he scored 22 points last time, 2 steals, a block, 5, but only 3 assists. And now he has 7 assists in 2 games that Payton has played. I'm pumping the brakes there until we see how the dust settles in New Orleans, because even though we're getting a discount, if Drew Holiday isn't getting assists, you're going to rely on him for what? You need like 28, 30 points, real points, to get him where you need him, or to get where you need him to go. So I'd actually rather look towards a discounted De'Aaron Fox, 6,900. That's a nice price point. You had a couple rough games here. Portland's a good defense. Warriors are a good defense. Plus, Buddy Hield and Bogdanovich got it going. He didn't really need to. He struggled. Was a bad game. But I like him to bounce back here. There's no reason that Dave Yeager isn't going to continue giving him minutes.
Right.
So 6,900 at home against Orlando, really, really favorable spot. They're 5-point favorites, 224 total. De'Aaron Fox at 6,900. These are the type of price points I really like to exploit, Dan. And I think Fox is one that you could do that. And it might result in me getting less Mike Conley because of it, right? Because it's such a good spot. That's pretty much where I'm at in the mid-range. When you're talking about the cheaper guys, it's kind of difficult. There's nobody that pops off the page. I mean, DJ Augustine, I don't know what his minutes are going to look like. Second of a back-to-back on the road, but this is a massive pace-up spot for Orlando. And if Augustine does get the run, he's probably going to end up having a very solid game just based on the pace differential alone, right? I mean, Orlando this season, you look at their pace, since the start of December, they're averaging 95 possessions per 48. 95.
Oh, wow.
Kings are at 104.
And Orlando's 98 on the season. So you see, like, That's a stark drop off. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. At 95.7 or so, but still, like that's 8 or 9 possessions per 48 disparity there. That's massive. I mean, that's huge. So the back-to-back sucks, but I feel like, he's one guy that at a cheap price, if he gets 32 minutes, in a pace-up spot, that really, really favors him. And I think you at least have to consider it based on such a huge pace discrepancy, pace-up spot for Orlando.
What do we make of Dennis Smith Jr. down here at 4,500?
No. I mean, seriously, dude, he's been invisible. I know he had a solid, what was it? I think one solid game since returning from injury, maybe 2 if you want to consider the first one. But he has just been way too unpredictable. In tournaments, if you want to roll the dice, sure. But look at his minute totals, right?
Oh,
he
yeah.
31 minutes against Boston, 22, 22, 21, 27. I'll do you one better. Did you see what Jalen Brunson did?
That's where I was going to go next. Is Brunson's at 4K?
Oh, no, I'm not touching him. That's as fluky as you could ever possibly get. But he had 13, 11, and 8 and 42 fantasy points in 26 minutes. Best part is, Dan, he shot 4 for 14.
Yes, sir.
Against the Sixers. I'm not going to Jalen Brunson. He got hot, and Rick Carlisle said, you know what? We're struggling. We've been down 12-plus points all game. Keep him out there. And it actually worked. He brought him back from a deficit. They still lost, but still, he brought him back. And Dennis Smith was getting nothing done. The fact that Dennis Smith Jr. can get the hook so quickly is concerning. I might entertain it in tournaments, again, because he's getting a significant pace-up spot against the Lakers team that's second in pace since the start of December. I'd have to look to see with LeBron out, assuming they're still playing quick.
Well, yeah, it's last 5, and that's not a large sample, but they're 1 overall at 108.
Oh, well, there you go. You would think they'd actually speed it up, right? So there's, if you wanted to throw out some tournament shares of him, you can, but I actually think Augustine is a better play, believe it or not. He also has a huge pace-up spot. And I actually don't think he's as risky and probably has just as high of a ceiling.
Makes sense. And one that I did play Dennis Smith Jr. last time out when Brunson went for the near triple-double, and it was a lot of I'm assuming my DK app's not updating because he still hasn't done anything.
Exactly. Yeah,
something's broken. DraftKings fault here. All right, let's move on.
Support.
Exactly. Damn it, guys! I need a ticket for this. Shooting guard is no, he just sucks. Sorry, you rostered the wrong person. Shooting guard up next, and we have Harden here on DraftKings. Don't forget, Dave will have a much more in-depth look as he goes in the deep dive at each position. He'll get the injury updates and the write-ups going, and usually out between 2:30 and 3 o'clock when Dave writes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. When Adam writes, not so much, but a little later. But nonetheless, you get it before it's old.
Before long.
Exactly. So you have to read really fast. No, we kid.
Nah, it's not that bad at all.
It's like 10 minutes before long. Harden, DeRozan, you have Drew Holiday eligible here. Brandon Ingram at 7,800 now. Luka Doncic in this matchup with the Lakers is at 7,700. Has some clear upside if he can get his shot falling, though it still seems like he's just moving in slow motion, but he's so much fun to watch. D'Angelo Russell, but he healed Doncic.
Yeah. He's
good.
Last game was the first really bad shooting game he's had in what feels like all season.
Yeah, 4 of 16, right?
He was 1 for 12 at one point.
You have Tim Hardaway Jr. here against Portland at 6,500. Terry Rozier probably falls off the page a little bit with Kyrie Irving back. Then you get into a mid-tier of Caldwell Pope, Josh Hart, Spencer Dinwiddie. So there are some options at different price points here that may at least intrigue some people. Let's start with Harden at the top at 12K, this matchup with Denver, and then move forward. What do you got from James Harden here? Is this just another night of usage is up, scoring is up, don't care who the opponent is, don't care the price tag? James Harden has to at least be part of your player pool.
You said it. Yeah. I mean, pretty much. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Plus, Denver, they started off the season real hot defensively, but things have changed a little bit. That hasn't been the case. You look at the last month of basketball, this is a Denver Nuggets team that defensively, they are, let's see, 18th in defensive rating, right? They're getting it done because they have a top 4 offense over that span. But yeah, they're playing at a pretty slow pace, no question. But their defense hasn't been very good, so it should balance out a little bit. You always, Adam and I talked about this on the Deeper Dive the other day. You always want to mention defensive rating and pace in the same conversation or in the same breath, really, because if you have a bad defensive rating and you play at a super slow pace, you're still talking about more points per 48 possessions per however many possessions, but less points overall still, right? Like you'd rather take an Atlanta team that's like 23rd in defensive rating and number 1 in pace and dead last in points allowed per game, because there's just more possessions and more opportunity to do damage. But in a spot like this, it really doesn't matter with Harden, because a few less possessions matter a whole lot less when he got, like, even that game against Portland where he disappointed with 58 fantasy points. He took 35 shots. He took 35 shots, scored 38 points. Right, took 17 threes. There's just no way you can fade him. You can comfortably fade him right now. And Eric Gordon's out. Chris Paul is still out. So the supporting cast here is an Austin Rivers that's playing like 40-plus minutes per game. Gerald Green, who actually makes for a decent tournament option, right? He's getting some decent minutes. He's jacked up double-digit shots in 3 straight. I actually think he has a higher ceiling, even with less playing time, than Austin Rivers. Oh, and he's almost $1,000 cheaper. You're looking at Daniel House and PJ Tucker. Seriously, this is crazy, right? And Clint Capella and Nene, if he plays,
right?
They don't. It's Harden, and the amazing thing about all this is they went into Golden State and won because of James Harden and nobody else. And they beat Memphis because of James Harden, and New Orleans and Boston and OKC and San Antonio. Yes, they had won all of those games straight and then fell to Portland. But Harden, top overall play. I don't have any reservations saying that. I'll take him over Davis facing Memphis all day. I'll take him over Giannis facing Utah absolutely all day. It's just, at this point, how do you get away from that?
It's a situation where I will hear, and I'm sure people will talk about it in tournaments. You got to talk about the price tag, and you got to talk about ownership, and
they don't.
Yeah, I have no desire to do either of those. I will find my way to start my lineups with James Harden on this slate. And listen,
especially after last game was a down game. Now it's like, all right, well he's not going to have one of those again for the next month or two.
Right. And I just have this, I may build the lineup balanced, like by choice, and keep Harden out of it, but I'm not advising anyone to do that. It just seems silly to stay away from him just because you want to get away from an ownership percentage here. Differentiate elsewhere. DeRozan, Ingram.
It's not like Davis and Giannis had these spectacular matchups at all.
Right. Well, what do we got from the rest of shooting guard, though? Obviously, over on FanDuel, you got to play 2 here on DraftKings. Maybe you play Harden at point guard or at the guard slot for whatever reason, the utility slot in this matchup, whatever the reason might be, even though it's an 8 p.m. game. But what do you got from the rest of shooting guard?
A couple guys here that stand out, but I wouldn't say it's a ridiculously deep position at all. Like I mentioned, Drew. I'm not huge on it. With Elf getting healthy and facing Memphis, I think you can do better. Significant pace down spot, like huge pace down spot. Memphis still playing at the slowest pace in basketball over the last month, and they will continue to do that. They'll continue to play at one of the slowest paces on the year, and they got a top 7 defense. Like it's a good team, good enough, and just a horrible team for fantasy purposes. Buddy Hield's fine. I don't have an issue with it. I don't think I want to go to D'Angelo Russell against Boston. Bogdanovich, though, his prices come down to 5,300. That does stand out to me. He was 5,700 left, 56, and I played him pretty heavily last slate. So at 5,300 against Orlando, I'll certainly take that bait. Got no problem doing that. And the great thing is he shot 5 for 17 in that game, still had 42 fantasy points. The one thing about Bogdanovich is, he doesn't put up huge numbers everywhere, but he can give you the 7 assists, 6 rebound, 15-point game with 2 steals. 3 steals and still get you above 40. That's a great thing to know at that price. I still think he's underpriced. He should be up around $6K. Seems like a reasonable salary for him and a guy that's getting really solid run. So yeah, I'm on him again. It'll be interesting to see what Gary Harris can do here, only because he continues to be really inexpensive, right? He's coming off a decent game. The minutes have kind of been sketchy. That was a bit of a blowout last time, though. I think he'll get back to around 32, 33 minutes here. 5K is cheap. I don't love it. I mean, I definitely don't love it, but I'm just trying to find some value here, because other than that, it's going to be like playing Reggie Jackson at shooting guard, who's 4,700, or like Reggie Bullock, who's getting a lot of minutes but really doesn't do much with those minutes. There isn't a ton of value at the time. I think it's going to be tough to get there, and hopefully we find it at these other positions, because right now I think the easiest thing on DraftKings, you plug Harden in, or if you're plugging him in a point guard, Bogdanovich is a really good play here. I don't think this is a spot you absolutely want to go crazy. The last guy I'll toss out, though, would be Terrence Ross. Huge pace-up spot, a high-scoring game. I think it stays competitive. And Ross is obviously, with his role, he's going to be all over the place in terms of production, but he's had some solid games. And at 4K, I could see him going 30-plus DK points here pretty easy.
A couple of teams here wondering about if there's anybody that stands out. San Antonio with their mixture of Forbes and the different guys at shooting guard. Dallas, we've talked about Dennis Smith Jr. with Doncic, with Wes Matthews, with JJ Barea. Does anyone stand out? And the Knicks, do any of their shooting guards stand out? I assume, being you didn't mention any of them, probably not. But are any of those teams ones that you might turn to because of matchup, because of pace, because of the way shooting guards tend to get shots up against their opponents, or are these just guys that are priced adequately and just not on your radar?
No, I'm not really buying it here. You're talking about these Knicks guys. The problem is I have enough. I don't think Portland's defense is like ridiculously stout, but they're good enough, and they've got good bodies on that team, just in terms of the overall rotation defensively. Aminu and even Evan Turner and even McCollum and Lillard's defense not getting lost on switches anymore. They become better. I don't really have much intention to go there. I'd rather target that Sacramento-Orlando game. Okay.
All right, let's move to small forward next, where we have Giannis at the top. Obviously, LeBron is out. So you go from Giannis at 11-4 with a matchup with Utah to DeMar DeRozan. Doncic is small forward eligible, so is Buddy Hield. You get Aaron Gordon here, Middleton, Hardaway Jr., Tatum. Gordon Hayward has his price tag rise to $6,200. He's coming off back-to-back 40-plus point outings for DraftKings points, I should say, and two different ways of getting there, which was nice to see. 35 points in that matchup with Minnesota, and we did talk about him and did say we didn't see a ton of the peripheral stats coming for Gordon Hayward, and then he goes out and does 16 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, a block. So a good outing there in 30 minutes, 6,200 here against the Nets. Giannis, this matchup against Utah, again, Giannis is a freak, and Greek freak, whatever we know at any point, but it feels as though this is a subpar matchup with minutes being, again, between 32 and 34, right? And Harden we know is going to get
low end 37, 38,
right? Yeah. So like Giannis
low end 37, 38.
Like it's one of those situations, and I am not the analyst here, and people know that, but it feels as though Giannis could go off here. Like he could. He's talented enough that matchup-wise, he is matchup-proof if he's going. But minutes-wise, matchup, going up $600 more to Harden just makes so much more sense to me on the high end of the price points. Is Giannis even on your radar at all here? Is that price point okay in this matchup and usage, or do you see this as one where you'd stay away from Giannis?
No, I don't want to go to Giannis here. I mean, could he have a good game? Of course he could. Of course he could. It's Giannis, right? He has monster games in many different occasions. But you have to ask yourself again, and yeah, he played 40 minutes last time, but that's still rare. Harden playing 40 minutes is par for the course.
Right.
So, 12K, 11-4, is it really worth getting the savings there and in a game that we expect to see just Harden's taking like 30 shots a game.
Yep.
it's really hard to justify it. That's all. By the way, though, I did find it funny. That game is a 222.5 total, which is pretty crazy, huh?
The Utah game, the Utah Milwaukee game.
Yeah, 222.5
for those two teams. Yeah, that's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. I can't do Giannis here. I don't argue with anyone who wants to, but that means you're not going Harden. I don't see that being any way I start. Well, I guess you could have some really big stars and scrubs lineups, but what else do you have here at small forward then? Do you go DeRozan at 82? Aaron Gordon has this matchup with Sacramento. You've already mentioned targeting this one a bit. Middleton in that same matchup against Utah. What do you got for some of your plays at small forward?
Some of these positions are rough. Like you can play Buddy Hield here if you want. I'll probably look to a decent amount of Aaron Gordon. This is a game I'm going to pretty heavily target. I mean, Aaron Gordon is a guy that can really thrive in these pace-up spots, right? A high-energy guy, and he's a pretty decent player. His minutes have been very consistent. His volume is up and down in terms of usage, but we know that he can put up good games. And I really like this matchup with Sacramento's front court for him. Aaron Gordon at 6,700 is a really friendly price. You have Bogdanovich here as well. Once you get to guys like Kyle Anderson, it gets tough because that price tag has come up.
Yep.
And his minutes are pretty consistent, but I just don't trust that production. I just don't like. Again, I'd go with Bogdanovich over him at $100 increase any day of the week. Hell, I'd probably even though he hasn't been great, I'd probably even go Evan Fournier here above Kyle Anderson because it's a good spot. No, listen, I'm not playing every Magic player, right? But I think all of them make sense in some regard. Just
sure.
They're all cheap.
Yeah, that's again from a lineup construction perspective. Do you want 5 Magic players in your lineup? No, but you can mix and match a bit here in matchups you like. So if you're looking at Augustine or you're looking at somebody else here for Orlando, do you play Gordon? Maybe not, but maybe in a different lineup or a different lineup construction, you can see what price points make the most sense. Any cheap guys here? Do you go to a DeMarre Carroll at 5,300? I guess you do have Bogdanovich, as you've said, at 5,300 here at small forward as well. Is there anybody mid-tier that you at least feel comfortable with, or is it a position to move on from?
If we're looking at value, I think I mentioned a bunch of those mid-range guys. Other than that, you're talking about the Andersons and like these cheap Detroit guys. And I don't think Joe Ingles is crazy. I don't like it, right? I'm not going to Kurucs against Boston. It's pretty rough here. Terrence Ross is still available if you need it. Harrison Barnes at 5,100. I mean, you're pretty much going to have to throw some darts. But I do think just going back to Aaron Gordon, 6,700 is pretty nice.
You do get a ton of minutes from Garrett Temple at 3,600. He doesn't shoot or do anything else, but he's on the court for 36 to 40 minutes almost every game. So that could be fun. I kid because I played him before and it's not a fun experience. Let's continue on here at power forward. And there we have Anthony Davis at the top against Memphis at 11.6. Giannis eligible here at 11.4. You get Blake. You get Julius Randle at 8,300. Same matchup with Memphis. LaMarcus Aldridge is at 74. Jason Tatum, you get Noah Vonleh for the Knicks here, and of course the revenge game out at Portland. Kevin Knox is 5,800 for the Knickerbockers. He is taking a decent amount of shots still. He's playing a good amount of minutes. He's up in the high 30s, low 40s, taking double-digit shots almost each and every game. He's sub 6K here. And then you get into the likes of Jaren Jackson and Al Horford and Al-Farouq Aminu. Thoughts on AD here first, then we can move on to the rest of power forward.
It's really the same concept with Harden. Is it worth going AD at a very, very similar price point? I don't think so. I don't think it is. I mean, AD is excellent, but I would much rather go with. What about you? What about you here?
For AD? Yeah,
like AD, Giannis, and Harden.
It's Harden. It's Harden for me until Chris Paul's back, and even then, Is Chris Paul, what, he's out for the season, Paul, or is he done or just done for a little while?
No. He's out for an extended period of time. I don't think we have an update yet, but he has no clue when he'll return is what he said last
Okay,
week.
it's the hamstring, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Until Paul is back, I'm on James Harden. Like that's where I'm starting lineups. That's where I'm figuring things out. Again, if I feel like I have such a terrible lineup that I need to adjust, I will. But I'm not going to adjust to an Anthony Davis or Giannis because they're price points. I'll adjust to a more balanced lineup that has probably a couple of 9K guys and go from there. I'm on Harden 100% here. Again, I don't MME, so I'm not saying 100% of my lineups, but just
he's your guy.
Yeah, he's my guy.
Look, Davis has had some phenomenal games. Yep. Recently too. Let's not forget that one was against Brooklyn. We loved him there. I mean, I was very high on Davis there. And Dallas. Dallas. It was another pretty solid matchup at home. Can Davis have good games, very good games in tough matchups? Absolutely, because the way he blocks shots and racks up steals. But you need a ceiling game from Davis here. And I don't know if he can hit his ceiling here, right? And that's kind of tough. Another thing I had asked Josh, we were doing the deeper dive. I brought him in because he produces this show. I said, run your machine, fella. Tell me what's the probability that Harden goes for 70 fantasy points? And he's like, I think it's 45%, which think about how nuts that is. Now this is in the current situation. And with Anthony Davis, it was like 15 or 10%, which is still really good. But Harden's probability to hit that is just so much higher than anybody else. So until he is priced where he is the Harden tier, like Westbrook during, remember the season where Kevin Durant got hurt?
Yep.
And they didn't have, so it was before Oladipo, before George, whatever. That was Westbrook tier and then top tier, right? So then like everybody else, until Harden, and it might not happen, gets in the tier of his own, which with the way he's playing right now, it's actually justified. Until then, I don't really have any interest in picking these other guys, unless I think it's just a really nice pivot in a really solid matchup. Like
what's
Davis,
the price? What's the price for Harden? Like, what is that price point? Like, what is the number? Do you have one? I know each slate is independent, and I know.
No. It's a reasonable question. I mean, it's over 13K.
Right.
Like it's 13K probably. That's what Westbrook got up to. And once Westbrook hit 13,000, that's when you really each day had to think, is it worth it?
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, Harden in this spot
maybe worth it.
Like more productive than
Westbrook
was during that crazy run as well.
And not to go off on too much of a tangent, we do this and we analyze player by player and we talk about individual price points. Obviously, it all comes down to how those pieces come together. And if you don't have the value or you don't have the mid-tier guys that you're comfortable with, then of course you stay away from Harden. Like, because you're going to have to go up to some higher priced players at certain positions that you may not be comfortable with, and you make the pieces work. Talking individually about these players, this price point is still low, and it's still low enough that it makes sense to stay on top of it and keep running it out. Are there power forwards here for you that stand out? Are there matchups or plays that you like here at power forward, or are you looking to maybe punt this position and go down cheap to somebody who might help you stave off that price point for James Harden?
Yeah, I already mentioned Aaron Gordon here, but just throw him out there one more time. A couple of other guys that kind of stand out. This guy is definitely a bit volatile, but Paul Millsap is cheap. I expect this game to stay close. Not a ton of scoring, not a ton of points, not the quickest, fastest paced game, but 5,400 is very reasonable. And Paul Millsap, when he's playing well, I think you see him get up to 28, 29 minutes in this next game. He played on Saturday 27 minutes, had a really solid start. So I think you can build off of that. If you're talking about these like upper mid-range guys, you have Griffin, you have Randall, Kuzma. I don't know what his deal is. Second of a back-to-back. I would say it's probably closer to doubtful, but we don't have any news. And then I'll throw Aldridge in there as well. Among those players, I think based on price, Aldridge is not a crazy play because of that salary, right? Not on a back-to-back. I'm good with that. Not huge on him, but a decent play, probably better cash-oriented. And then Blake Griffin's at 8,500. It's just tough for me to not at least entertain the idea of playing Blake at that price point, right? Pop's good at taking away opposing teams' best players, but it might be more difficult when you've got Blake and Drummond in there. And if you think that's going to be the case, that he looks to take Blake away from this, Drummond would also become a very, very appealing play. 8,100. His production's been mostly down lately, but Like a lot of that is matchup based. Yeah, Utah, even though he had 46 fantasy points, and their defense in the front court hasn't been as good. Memphis, very difficult matchup. Milwaukee, they lost by a lot of points. He played only 30 minutes in that game. Then had some foul trouble against Orlando, had 33 points in only 25 minutes. You get what I'm saying here. Like it's been a tough stretch where whether it be minutes, foul trouble, or matchup. But 8,100 on Drummond in this spot to me is actually really interesting. I don't think anyone looks here, and we'll get to center in a minute. It's probably going to be deep. It is deep from what I've looked at already. But I think Drummond, if you think that Blake Griffin is in a spot where they look to take him out of the game, will be a good play. If you don't assume that's going to be the case, then Griffin at 8,500, it's a price point that he can beat quite often. Is he a necessity? Absolutely not. But he's a decent play. Because I think there's also some decent mid-range talent here. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. is 5,800 against New Orleans. What a great spot, right? What a great spot for Jaren Jackson. Played 14 minutes against them earlier this year. Had 4 fouls in the 14 minutes, of course. But he's hot and cold. He's a rookie. He hasn't hit that rookie wall yet from what we've seen. He gets in enough foul trouble where he doesn't play enough minutes to hit the rookie wall. But, Dan, in these games where he hasn't gotten – it's funny. I say hasn't gotten in foul trouble. What I mean is he either fouls out really late or catches a bunch of his fouls late because he had 6, 5, and 3 fouls over his last 3 games, but he played 35, 31, and 34 minutes over those games. So the thing that we know is that Bickerstaff is going to give him good minutes when he's playing well and when he's not in foul trouble. To me, that makes him very appealing in this spot. When you talk about a pace-up matchup, you're literally talking about the slowest team in the league, like the slowest team in the entire National Basketball Association, and then a team that plays at a top 5 pace on the year. It's just a wild difference. 8.5 possessions per 48 difference there. So I really like J3 here in a good spot. I don't know what they call him. It's just easier to say that. I don't know what your thoughts on someone like Al Horford.
That's why I wanted to. We talk about the Nets and centers, right? Like that. We've gone there many times. I just don't know if Horford is playing enough minutes at the like where we would target them, exactly. And secondarily, he's not playing a ton of minutes. He's playing 25 to 28 minutes. Mm-hmm. I like it. I again, this sort of guy that I'll keep in mind, but I don't see myself starting any lineup construction or really forcing him in anywhere. Yeah.
Like, it's honestly, I'd rather have Jaren Jackson at basically the same price.
Oh, the upside, yeah.
The ceiling, absolutely. Like, if you said, I have to play one of these guys in cash, let's just hypothetically, I'd probably suggest Horford because I think he probably gives you around 30 or so here.
Yep.
But Jaren Jackson can give you 45 plus. He really can. Is it something that we expect to happen? No, but it is a good spot, assuming that he's out of foul trouble. So it's just one of those scenarios where you say, hey, and by the way, I'd probably suggest, hey, if you're playing cash, try and get up to like Aaron Gordon instead. But with Jaren Jackson, it's a favorable spot, and we've seen the upside. We know what he can do. He just has to stay on the court, and if he can do so against New Orleans, I think it's going to be a really, really nice spot for him to put up numbers. And hey, this game should stay competitive as well.
All right, let's talk some centers and be done as we are here on the DFS Early Bird. Don't forget, promo code EarlyBird gets you 1 week for free over at awesemo.com. And that gets you everything other than Fantasy Cruncher. So Fantasy Cruncher is still an add-on, but you get the lineup builder, which is from Awesemo with his grades in there. And then you get access to all the content from Adam and from Dave. The shows are obviously live over on YouTube. Those are free. You can watch the NBA Strategy Show each and every morning. And then you get the deep dive at 5 p.m. Then you have Live Before Lock, typically with Josh and/or Spags hosting for Ed Fear each and every night. So with that said, let's talk centers and move along. We've already talked AD. Yeah, Jokic here at 10K against Houston. Vucevic gets a matchup with Sacramento. You have to like it. Price point that you may debate, but the offense clearly upside here at 9,500. You talked Drummond already at 81. Nurkic against the Knicks seems like to be a decent spot. You get Capella, Gobert, Marc Gasol against New Orleans. Lots to talk about here on the top end, 7K or above. Who are some of your favorites?
Yeah, it's a deep. Oh, excuse me. Deep. I ate a lot of good food tonight.
I was going to say, that's victory coming back up on you.
Yeah. It's a good position, and there are good players at each spot. To start, we got to talk about Vooch. He's playing the second of a back-to-back. I know. Road game, 27 minutes. He oh, no. I'm sorry. That wasn't the 27 minutes. They haven't updated this one yet. It was because I know he had a huge game. Let me just pull up his line from this one. It was against the Clippers. Lost by 10. He had 16 points, 24 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 blocks. It's a monster game. And I know I've stressed it a lot or just kind of said it a lot, but Vooch is putting up career highs in like every single category this year. It's crazy. So do the back-to-backs, worry me? I guess. Let me do something real quick. Just pulling up minutes per game on back-to-back, because that's kind of important. See how many back-to-backs he's played. Seven back-to-backs, 31.6 minutes. Not bad. 22 points, 11 rebounds, 5.5 assists, a steal, a block, 1.5 threes, 54% field goal percentage. Not bad. Like that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. Is it on the road? Yeah, it's on the road. That kind of sucks. But at the same time, he's not traveling outside of California, going from the Staples Center to Sacramento. So I still have interest. He's expensive. I get it. But, man, he has just been phenomenal. Nikola Jokic against Houston in what I expect to be a close game for sure. Both pretty solid teams. I don't love the matchup against Houston for centers. I don't. But there aren't that many like high-priced guys you need to pay for other than Harden. I'm probably not getting to Davis or Antetokounmpo. Vooch is interesting. Irving's interesting. We talked about Blake, but none are priorities. So I think Jokic at least needs to be in the conversation because among the players on this slate, he just has immense upside. And kind of regardless of matchup, we've seen him put up just monster numbers no matter what. Not every game. He can quiet down at times, but definitely a good spot. Another one, Yusuf Nurkic. Terry Stotts, if Nurkic isn't in foul trouble, if it's not a blowout, he's getting 30-plus minutes.
Right.
And he just continues to be very consistent when he gets that run. So I like him as well. It is a deep position, though. I talked about Drummond. This is a great spot for Drummond where I just think he goes vastly overlooked, and that makes me like him even more. How about Marc Gasol, Dan? 7K flat against New Orleans. Another spot where I would look to exploit. Has he come back down to earth? Has he been a little has he slipped through the cracks lately? He has, but that's another good price. Jaren Jackson, we talked about. Paul Millsap's here. Horford, we talked about them. One more I'll just throw out there. I feel like he's definitely taken a step back this season since joining the Mavericks, but DeAndre Jordan, 6,100 against the Lakers. He's still getting 30-plus minutes in competitive games. I expect this one to be competitive as well. Can he give you 45 fantasy points here? He can. And he had 41 2 games ago against Boston. It's been a rough go at times because his floor has seems to have been lowered. But and oddly, the guy figures ways to turn the ball over a lot without taking any shots. He's just terrible ball handler, as he should be. It's a deep position. Willie Cauley-Stein's down to 5,700. This will probably be the most difficult position to make decisions and stick with it because you're going to have to take stands somewhere. Willie Cauley-Stein at 5,700 to me is ridiculously low.
Well, you get down even a little further, and I get that McGee's been out, be it JaVale McGee at 5,500, Enes Kanter's 5,300. I get that he's not getting the minutes per se, but the Luke Kornet experience is going to disappear. Like, he's not going to have these, what he shoot, like 7 of 9 for three-point range in that one game that he had a big outing. Kanter here at 5,300, last 2 games out, 20 minutes, 36.5 DraftKings points, 27 minutes against Lakers for 46.75 DraftKings points. I might take a flyer there in a tournament lineup and hope for 25 minutes. What do you think of this matchup with Portland for Enes Kanter?
Not big on it. There's just so much risk. Again, it would be different if I wasn't looking at the position and saying, okay, I can pay up a little bit more for Willie Cauley-Stein.
Okay.
I can get to Jaren Jackson, who I like. DeAndre Jordan, I don't. I think he's going to play 10 more minutes than Cam. It's just tough for me because we really don't know what Fizdale is going to do. And if you wanted to, throw like a 3 to 5% flyer in there, sure, but he is just so risky.
Yeah, I agreed. And obviously, folks playing single entry or cash lineups wouldn't make a ton of sense. But if, to Dave's point, 3-5%, or if you just want to build a lineup that is fairly chalky for GPPs and take a flyer on Cantor, the upside's there. We've seen it. We've seen it in limited minutes. So could have some impact. Any cheap ones here at center, or just not worth it for you with the depth up top?
No, I think the cheap guys that you're really looking to target are in that 5K range, and they're really solid. Aside from that, it's going to be tough because if you're looking for value here, that means you're going to have to forego some really good plays in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9K range, and to me, that's a little bit too difficult to choke down.
All right, let's close it out as we always do. I think we know where the answer is, but above 10K, you get Jokic, Giannis, AD, Harden. Where are you starting lineup construction?
You know the answer to that. James Harden got to.
I feel like I should have gone Jeopardy style and just said James Harden and have you say who I'm starting my lineup construction with. All right. As always, find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find him on Sirius XM Fantasy, the Awesemo Show over there. Still Sunday morning coming this coming weekend.
That's right. Yeah, throughout the playoffs. A good show today, a really good show. And I didn't have to worry about doing a show, during the Eagles game or during any games, which was really quite cool.
So that's 8 to 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings and Saturday nights from 5 to 7 or 7 to 9?
5 to 7 Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday throughout the playoffs.
And that's Sirius 210 XM87. You can find the phone number. I used to know that by heart. I don't anymore. But you can, of course.
XM Fantasy, 888-962-2682.
There it is. Well done.
Fly through that bitch.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Those are the days. Anyway, let's close it out. You can find me at Dan Stratford. Of course, it's Awesemo_com. You can go over to Awesemo.com to ask any questions you might have. You can send you know what you should do, listeners, is send a question to customer service so Josh gets to reply to you.
There it is.
Josh, you're a good dude. But nonetheless, you can head on over and ask any questions you might have about memberships. And of course, early bird, one word promo code to get 1 week for free. With that said, best of luck on your Monday 8-game slate. We'll be back with you Wednesday morning. You get Emac and Adam tomorrow morning right here on the DFS Early Bird.